Wandering Winder here with the last day of previews for Dominion Plunder. And yeah, just a quick note, this is the last day of previews. Full set will get revealed, I don't know, like next week or something, which I will review also at some point, but probably not as quickly as I've reviewed these, just because I don't have time to do that. But we'll see what the schedule works out as, and yeah, I'll try to get that up as soon as I plausibly can. Um, let's jump into the cards for today. Taskmaster, 3 cost action duration, plus a card, not plus a card, excuse me. Taskmaster is a 3 cost action duration, plus an action, plus a money, and if you gain a card costing exactly 5 coins this turn, then at the start of your next turn, repeat this ability. And that ability includes the repeat this ability part of the ability. So it just stays in play forever if you gain a card costing exactly 5 every turn. So a few things about this. One, if you get enough of these in play, like 5, you can just gain, you could just buy 5s every single turn until there are no more 5s or the game is over. So that's something that I guess could theoretically come up. Um, maybe you do that in Duchy Duke, although yeah, I mean probably this is actually good for Duchy Duke, right? You get a few of these and then you just need a couple coppers every turn. I don't know. You want to get it set up correctly because if the chain breaks at any point, it is going to be real bad for you probably. So there's probably some way to get through that well, but you're going to have to be a bit tricky careful. Um, but I mean, this is effectively like a very cheap treasury if on the subsequent turns once you get it going, but it also requires you to be getting 5s every turn. At some point, you probably won't want the 5s, and then this card is quite bad in your hand if you're not getting the second effect because it's pretty much just a copper. Like it's a copper the turn you play it, and then every subsequent turn it's like it's a treasury or a peddler or whatever. Um, which is going to make it terrible for money, by the way, because at some point in money you want to buy a province or just some card that's not a 5, or you're going to miss 5, and this is going to be awful there. Also, just I think in most games you eventually get to the point where you're not buying 5s anymore, and then when this falls off, that's quite bad. Um, are a couple of them good enough in the building phase to be worth it? I mean, maybe. It's obviously going to depend on the quality of the 5s in question. Um, I mean, this is probably not a very good card usually, but I think there will be spots for it. Again, the kind of power level and design that I'm going to like. There's also some thought about opening with this around, and I will probably do a video on that at some point. Opening 2 of these seems like a pretty bad decision probably because you're not going to hit 5 and then you're going to be sad. Opening 1 of these in some kind of a silver equivalent, you could try to do, but I just think like you're in pretty big danger of the turn that you have this, you're not going to hit 5 because you need your other 4 cards to make 4 money. So that's probably going to mean if you want to open it, you're going to want to pair it with something else that can make you money, or if borrow or something is around, or maybe save or something like that, where you can hope to encourage this to help you to have you hit 5. Then maybe you can start rolling with it a bit. But you're probably rarely going to get lots of copies of this. Duke is the one case that I can think of for that, although there's probably others. Um, yeah, let's move on. King's Cash. 7 cost treasure. You may play a treasure from your hand 3 times. Cool. Um, yeah. First of all, I mean, this is apparently like just much weaker than King's Court. If you're triple playing a copper, this is effectively making you two money, like a silver, because you were already going to get the one from playing the copper anyway. So you only get it two more times. So this is getting, you know, this is getting you two money. If it's triple playing a silver, it's making you four. If it's triple playing a gold, it's making you six. If it's triple playing a gold, I mean, so here's the thing though. It's kind of like bank. Like, how much do you need that much extra money, right? If you're triple playing a gold, that gives you six extra money. So you have nine from these two cards, which is nice. And I guess if you're drawing your deck and you have one gold and one of these, those two cards make nine, which is still a lot worse than platinum because it's two cards to make nine. But this is once you have if you have the gold already, then this is more efficient than platinum. Also, platinum plus this was making you 15 out of two cards, which is a lot more efficient. Whatever. So those are probably the applications when you're drawing your deck, but also if you have some specialty treasures. So I guess I never finished my point. If you're just playing like a money deck, gold in this is pretty bad because you don't need all that extra money. And just if this was another gold, then you have gold and gold. You have six, which is less, but like you're probably still profiting off that. And if this only hits with a silver, then this makes four. I don't know. Maybe this is still better than gold. You need to line it up with a silver for it to make more money than gold. And if you line it up with a copper, it makes one less. With a silver, it makes one more. So I mean, it's probably okay in those decks, but I mean, you do need to actually have a decent treasure count in them of decent treasures to play. Um, and then if you're drawing your deck, this can just be a bunch of money. A bunch of money is not typically the thing that you're really looking to need in drawing decks, but I mean, sometimes you do. Sometimes just having a bunch of money is nice. So you can keep it in mind there. Um, it's a stop card that will make a bunch of money for you. And then specialty treasures like supplies, like I don't know. There are a lot of treasures in this set. Um, Goat, it lets you trash a bunch, whatever. Um, yeah, there are going to be some treasures where playing them three times, a Horn of Plenty, boom, right? Where playing them three times is going to get you a lot, and then this is going to be better in those cases. But pretty much always, I mean, there will be boards where it's not, but the vast majority of the time it's going to be just much, much worse than King's Court, but that's fine. Um, they do have the same two-letter acronym, KC, so eat your heart out. Let's move on to First Mate. Five cost action. Play any number of action cards with the same name from your hand, then draw until you have six cards in hand. So this is kind of a village. I mean, it is a village if you have more than one card with the same name in your hand, because you get to play two actions with only spending one action play. And then it's a draw to X card also. Um, it's a non-terminal draw to X card if you only have one action with the same name. Kind of non-terminal anyway. Um, and then it's just a draw to six if you don't have any actions, which is not something that should come up very much. This is probably strong, but it's going to be a little bit weird to figure out. Um, right? How much are you going in on one named action card? Because you really would like to play multiple cards with this, and probably like to get the most out of the drawing, you would want them to be stop cards, but they don't have to be. Um, if you just play two cantrips, then this is a village for you that maybe draws another card. Um, right? If you had a five card hand or whatever, if you're getting discard attacked, right? So I think this compares probably favorably to Cursed Village, but it's going to be trickier to figure out like when in the turn you play it because you're going to want to maximize the number of cards it's playing and also maximize the number of cards it's drawing. And doing both of those things together is not going to necessarily be all that easy. I guess it probably works well with something like Taskmaster, which is not a terminal and doesn't draw cards, and unlike Festival, isn't also itself a village, so this giving you the village effect helps more. Um, but yeah, I mean, Squire, right, sometimes is a village, so you play one of the squires for actions, you play your other two squires for buys or silvers or whatever, and then you draw a bunch. Um, but I think you should also recognize that this card can probably be okay if it's only giving you village or only giving you draw. Probably more only the draw than only the village, because it's going to be kind of hard for only the village to work out for you. But like if you have some other just like vanilla villages, and then you play a village, you play this, you play two bridges in hand, and then you draw a bunch of cards. That's very good. That's very good if you can do that. So those kinds of setups are probably where this is going to shine. Although, if you can also get it to be I mean, in that case, it is both village and draw. So that's, I mean, probably mostly where it's going to shine. Um, yeah, you have some other villages to help get you going, and then you have some good terminal payload stop cards that you have a lot of copies of, and you're still going to want a lot of thinning, like draw to X in general, so that you can line this stuff up. Um, and then yeah, a few of these, and you're off to the races. Let's move on to either Shaman or Shaman. Tell me how you pronounce it in the comments. Plus an action, plus a money. You may trash a card from your hand. 2 cost action, if I didn't say that. And then in games using this at the start of your turn, gain a card from the trash costing up to 6. This card seems incredibly powerful. Um, Note that if you're playing solitaire, you're like, oh, I'm just going to have to regain the thing that I trashed. You're not playing solitaire in, well, I mean, I guess you could, and that would change the evaluation of this card drastically. But if you're playing a more than one player game, um, you play this, you trash an estate from your hand at the start of at the start of their next turn. Your opponent has to gain that estate, so it's like a junking it. You've trashed and you've junked them, which is really, really strong. You won't want to use trash for benefit in those games because whether they have a shaman or not, you trash your gold into a province, they get to gain the gold at the start of their turn because you get to pick which card you're gaining. And you're not going to get a chance to gain it because they're going to have gained it unless you've done like multiple times, and they'll get one of them, and there will still be one for you. This I know I was talking yesterday about that card, whatever that card was, being the strongest card in the set. This card seems incredibly strong. It's very much like an attack, and I now think this is going to be the strongest card in the set. Is very much like an attack. You can't load up too much on them, but if you have fewer of them than your opponent, you're going to end up getting junked. And so, I mean, in some ways, it's probably going to be a lot like Ambassador. You need to get a bunch, and then you're going to need to build up your other deck control stuff. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think the games using this are going to be real junk fests. I mean, if there's other trashing, you're going to end up keep regaining junk anyway. And in games with this, maybe you prefer the other trashing over this because this isn't the best trasher ever. But like trashing is going to be in some ways even more important, and maybe in some ways not because you're just going to end up gaining junk anyway. But if it's something like Chapel, um, something where you can trash more than one card or get rid of more than one card in a turn, it's going to be important. Also, exile with this in play, any exile is going to look probably quite a lot stronger because it will actually thin you. And well, I shouldn't say that because you're not junking your opponent. So maybe it's actually weaker, but it's actually thinning you over the long haul. So maybe a combination of trashing and exile will actually get you thin while still junking your opponent. This seems incredibly brutally strong because of the setup, or it's going to make trashing in these games incredibly brutally strong because of the setup. And even though this is a fairly weak trasher, although it's not even that weak, right? It gives you a money. So, like compared to Trade Route or something, compared to Forager, Forager doesn't make you a money at the start of the game. This does. So, I mean, just yeah, wow. But the attacking aspect of this is really not something to look over. Let's move on. Um, Journey. So we got our landscapes here. Journey is an event, costs 4 once per turn. If the previous turn wasn't yours, you don't discard from play and clean up this turn and take an extra turn after this one. So if you're drawing your deck every turn, then this probably doesn't do so much because the cards that you played to make this turn do something are going to be in play and you're not going to have them next turn. Having said that, any cards you gained this turn won't be in play, and any extra cards any extra cards that you didn't play, like you didn't have to play, you drew them but didn't have to play, they can get discarded so you can draw them the next turn. Maybe if you draw your deck and play everything, you're going to be able to set up a combo sometimes. So if you can buy, bridge, King's Court, and this, then you're going to have King's Court, bridge next turn. On the other hand, if you can buy all of that in one turn, are you not already winning the game? I mean, maybe you're not, and this just gets you incrementally further. But like, I have 4 or 5 buys. I have enough money to get multiple King's Courts, multiple bridges, and yeah, probably bridges help facilitate that. But and then I still have to buy this 4 cost event. Um, I don't know. Maybe you would only be able to get like 4 or 5 provinces, and then this way you're gonna get them all. I don't know. Maybe something like that can come up where you really slam the door. Um, Apart from that, like if you're drawing your deck, I think it's going to be hard to really be gaining enough cards on your turn. And it would mostly be that you get payload in this, and then you play your payload the next turn, and um, and you and then you buy more deck control. So like this will have some marginal benefit, I'm sure, in some cases like that, where the payload you're buying makes more than the 4 money. You get the buyback because you got to buy your next turn, and yeah, you'll be able to take some advantage due to that. But it's like quite a bit weaker in general probably than most of the other extra turn things for that kind of deck. If you're not drawing your deck, then this is better than like Mission or Outpost or whatever because you just get a normal hand more or less. Of course, more stuff can miss the shuffle. You do have to worry about that. And if you're near the end of a shuffle, like your victory cards won't be in play, so you probably will make your next shuffle worse. So do watch out for that. But like in the greening phase of a money deck, sometimes you don't hit 8 and you can just spin the wheel again on does my next hand hit 8? So this is going to be strong in those situations. And then we should probably also talk about cards that want there to be lots of cards in play because there can be lots of cards in play already. Um, there are probably a number of these, but the ones that I'm really thinking of off the top of my head is Bank, and then that treasure from Monday or whatever it was, or Horn of Plenty, I guess, right? Those want cards in play, or differently named cards in play, or things of that nature. And yeah, like at the end of a Horn of Plenty, you get to the end of a Horn of Plenty chain, you use a few Horns of Plenty to gain a few more Horns of Plenty. You buy this, and then your next hand is maybe just a few Horns of Plenty, but you can play them to gain three more things, and then because you still have all the cards in play from this turn, they do gain expensive things, and it really does an awful lot for you in that scenario. So that's probably also a very strong synergy for this event. Yeah, and bank, like if you just buy a bank in this, then the next turn the bank probably makes a lot of money, etc., etc. Um, yeah, let's move on to this trait, which is cursed. When you gain a cursed card, gain a loot and a curse. So you're going to get the card in question, a loot, which is, if you remember, pretty much like a gold with a buy usually, but there's a bunch of different ones, so it's slightly different, yada yada. And you're going to gain a curse. This obviously looks a lot better if the curse is already gone, or if the curses aren't going to hurt you for some reason, like you can immediately trash them with Watchtower or something. Trader in this with this around can probably make money a lot better because you gain whatever the trait card is, you can turn it into a silver if that would be better. The curse turns into a silver, and then the loot can turn into a silver. I think because it's exchanged now, you can return it to its pile. The loot could turn into a silver if you realize that it's like not a loot you want more than a silver, but I think almost all of them you would want more than a silver. I think in general though, like this is not a good deal. You would probably usually not rather have a curse and a loot than nothing, if you're trying to draw at least. If you're playing money, then that's much closer to neutral. A loot and a curse is probably going to improve your like money density in most cases if you're playing a money deck, but it's not going to be by a ton because the curse hurts a lot. The extra ability on the loot might help you out enough to make this better, but it's just going to largely be dependent on how good the card in question is. And yeah, I mean, if you're drawing and you can deal with the junk well enough, then maybe it's still okay to get the cursed cards. You probably don't want to get them too early if it's going to ruin your deck control because it's a lot of stop cards to add. I mean, even if it's like Governor, right? Governor draws three. You need to do the draw option. Well, I guess maybe, let's see. I guess Lab is like, yeah, like Governor Lab is kind of neutral on draw. And, and you have this is like not even a very good deal, right? So, I mean, it's maybe not, strictly speaking, making your deck worse, but it's not making your deck as much better as some other card would be, most likely. So I think this is mostly going to keep you away from the trait card until, if if and until you can deal with the junk, the curse particularly. To some extent, the loots are only but in money decks, it's going to be much less of a downside. If this hits some cheap card that's reasonable for money, you might just open with a bunch of them in money, and you'll be a bit swingy because your deck is getting bigger and higher variance between card to card. But like a curse and a loot on turn one is going to actually improve your deck, your starting deck, pretty significantly in a lot of cases. Not to mention whatever card you're getting. So yeah, if it's a cheap card, you may end up playing money because you can ramp up your deck much more quickly. Um, but we'll see. Let's move on lastly to trait. Trait. It is a trait. The trait is patient. And it says at the start of your cleanup phase, you may set aside patient cards from your hand to play them at the start of your next turn. Again, I much prefer this grammar than the old, wrong, weird commas. Um, the to play, I love that phrasing much more. I guess it was to play before, but there was this comma. Anyway, this is going to be well. It's obviously good if you get over terminaled, can't play everything. You can set that aside to play the next turn. Strategically, a little bit of overdraw is going to go a long way with these cards because, like, if lab is the patient card, you have an extra lab that you don't play, and then that starts you off in a very good spot on the next turn or something. So a little bit of deck control is quite good. In some cases, you may intentionally hold back a card just to try to line it up with the next turn. That's going to reward deck tracking and some awareness. Yeah, I mean, you got to figure out what the card is and what the situationality is, and how good it's going to be to do this stuff. So it's going to be a bit hard. If this hits like a Smithy, like if it hits the exact card Smithy or Envoy or something like that, terminal draw cards, this is going to make playing money with those a lot more enticing because those cards are really good in terminal draw money. The problem with terminal draw money is you don't get to play enough of them because they'll collide too much. Well, that's one of the problems. There are other problems, but it solves that one of the problems. So it's not going to make terminal draw money fantastic by any means, but it will make it noticeably better because you can just like always buy a bunch of Smithies. So like you open, like if it hits Smithy, you open Silver Smithy, and then you just like buy Smithy every turn, maybe even over gold, and you're going to draw your deck every turn and buy a province every turn at some point, right? Or you got close to it anyway. So that's because it's not just one patient card; it's all of them. That is probably going to be a real strategy in some cases. Not like a world-beating strategy, but one that you actually seriously have to consider, whereas normally you would not do so. So yeah, apart from that, strategically, it's going to be a little bit more tricky to figure out, right? Like you have to see what it hits, what it enables you to do. It can be a village. It's kind of like delay that you don't have to buy, but only for this card. So that's not an analogy that helps people, or maybe it is. I don't know. Overall, I am somewhat encouraged by this set. It looks to be a lower power level than the last few sets that we've gotten, which I like. More situational cards, which I like. So hopefully that will all be nice. I am a little bit worried about a few things being super strong. I think games with Shaman might be very miserable. Um, and at least without other strong thinning. But hey, I like those kind of games some amount of the time, and these cards, each of the cards are only going to show up like 2% of the time, so that's fine. You can ban it if you really, really don't want to play with it. Um, yeah, like I say, when the full set gets released, I will try to do a review of it when I can. I do have some stuff going on, so it may end up being a few days for that. But hopefully it would just be like I'm uploading in the evening instead of in the morning. But when I say evening, I mean US time because I'm US based, if you couldn't tell by my accent. Anyway, yeah, as always, leave comments, questions, suggestions, advice, things I missed, things you disagree with, etc., etc., etc. in the comments section. We'll see you again soon. And at some point, I will probably try to get to play with this stuff, but we'll see how much time I have for that. Thanks for watching, everybody.